This is Faye from Face World Media. It is like 8:30 p.m. my time. This is probably the latest I've ever gone live, but I have two such lovely ladies with me here. I'm so thrilled. We have Cristina and Shub from Alcott Global. Hello. And I'm just so thrilled to be here with you. And, again, just a very, very brief intro. Going to jump right in. Christina is the head of marketing and partnerships at Alcott Global, and Shub is head of training and development. And I feel like you both wear so many hats, and I've done such interesting work with you since April this year. And to be honest, as a result, I've learned so much about supply chain. I've always been interested. And now, because of you, working with you, knowing Alcott, I'm just now even more eager to explore more. So welcome to the show.
So Faye, I will just say one very quick thing. Since the time we spoke last, we've already rebranded what I take care of. It's now I'm now head of learning solutions because we just move very fast. I'm sorry, we forgot to update you about that.
Oh, absolutely. Shub, say that one more time. I think you froze for a second. You said the rebrand was for
Learning solutions. So we've rebranded training and developed as learning solutions because it will be covering more than just training or workshops.
mm, awesome. So I think, this conversation, by the way, is for a lot of people thinking, well, I understand supply chain sort of, but also, a lot of people don't fully understand and what it entails, the opportunities that exist. So thank you for leading the way. I'm just going to hop right in and kind of ask first is, what we're here for is introducing Alcott to the global audience. So for more people to understand what supply chain is, the opportunities are. So who wants to jump in first? So who want to maybe explain a bit about Alcott?
I can go. Hi,
Please,
everyone.
Cristina.
So Alcott Global is a few years old company in offering services in the supply chain space. We have clients in major regions, like from North America, Latin America, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and of course, Asia Pacific, where we are based. That's why this call is so late for North America. Our mission is actually to connect and upgrade the supply chain ecosystem. We do that through finding the right talent via executive search. We have learning solutions that Shub has mentioned just now for developing skills in the supply chain. And then we have recently launched a beta version of a marketplace for supply chain technology. So in a nutshell, this is what Alcott Global does.
Wow, I'm learning new things already. Go ahead, Shub.
So I was just going to say that Christina is being very humble here, but one of the things which differentiates Alcott Global from other organizations which started out as executive search is the fact that we're also providing quality content on the industry to our audience, to our clients, to our candidates, to anybody who's interested in supply chain as well. And Christina leads that, so I think that's why she was being a bit humble to share about it. So that would include, doing podcasts, creating infographics, creating content. We've done events, virtual conferences, and summits, which had 10,000, 12,000 people during the pandemic, bringing them all together to understand how we as supply chain can come together to the varying issues which the pandemic brought and highlighted about different organizations and how critical supply chain is to the success of any organization.
Mm. I have to say, as a podcaster, I am impressed and also a little jealous because I started my show in 2014 and you guys started kind of in the midst of the pandemic. So, to break that down a little bit, may I ask whose idea was it to start a podcast and how did you ideate to create the show a few years ago?
So actually, Alcott Global started in 2017, but mostly focusing on executive search. All the other services were added to the portfolio later. But quite soon after Alcott Global started, a podcast channel already took off. It was actually, it started a bit earlier, but then it took off with high speed after that.
Mhm.
So it's that is our oldest podcast channel, the Leaders in Supply Chain podcast. And through the nature of the job that executive search consultants do, right? They have to always be on top of what's happening in the industry. So they speak to so many people. I think in a weekly basis, they speak to, I don't know whether they reach 100, but anyways, a few tens of industry professionals, right, at high level, understanding what's happening. And through the podcast, actually, the intention was, okay, let's give an insight to the community as well into what's relevant, what are people dealing in the supply chain, real time.
Mm. Wow. And again, like you said, it took off right around, I think in 2020, even though you had the show running, you put in a lot of work, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden, did you see like tremendous amount of viewership, comments, and like when did you realize, wow, this is really taking off?
I think it was before, because the
Mhm.
audience, right? The audience would come back and say, "Wow, I listened to that podcast. It's amazing." You
Mhm.
know, the authenticity and how people share case studies and things that are relevant is very useful. So for that particular channel, that's how it started. But what really happened in 2020 is a very positive turning point where. For us, pandemic played an important role in going into the events world. It's basically expanding the podcast, but having, instead of having weekly guests or monthly guests, we suddenly had between 50 speakers or 70 speakers in one forum. But the spirit was the same, right? The same kind of tone, the same kind of sharing, people discussing real matters. And for the audience, many times people would send us, it's almost like we take the front seat and we can see what's happening and what these people are dealing with, and what comes next, right? As a supply chain professional or somebody who wants to grow in their career, this is very relevant information, because then they will know, oh, but I would like to do this. Look, that's an interesting problem people are solving.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
interesting. And
that's
I just,
that's the
mhm.
key here. What Christina mentioned, it's real people, it's their authentic stories, things which they are dealing with,
Mhm.
because you have a lot of leadership forums or leadership podcasts of how you should be doing it,
Mhm.
and what you should do versus what people end up doing can be very different. So the whole spirit of the podcast and events is about share where you are right now, what are the challenges, how are you facing it, what led you to do it. So it's uncovering people's stories, and learning from them, because then it's much more relatable to the audience, and they're like, oh, this person is going through, I'm going through something similar as well, so if they can
Mhm.
solve it, I can solve it too, rather than a theoretical concept you throw at people and talk about that.
Absolutely. And just as a reminder for people who are watching on some LinkedIn, we can't really see you as a person count. So if you have any questions and comments, we absolutely welcome that. I know it's a little late for people in North America, so we do monitor the comments. And if you want to drop in later on, so I just want to take a moment and thank everybody for being here. And Shub, I know that you've been sort of the forefront, the face, one of the faces at a media level for Alcott. So I've seen you interviewing a number of guests, and I really like your style, both via audio on the podcast as well as in front of there's a YouTube channel as well for Alcott Global. I recommend people to definitely check it out. And I'm sure you're both of you are very active in the event section or sector as well. So could you maybe talk about that, like yourself as a creator? Were you surprised by it, and do you find it exciting?
I definitely find it very exciting. I think speaking to people who, so what I take care of for the podcast channel is to come from the perspective of talent. So it doesn't have to be people from HR. It could be people who are from HR. It could be people, leaders, people who are focused on supply chain talent and how to bring it and bringing their stories. So I think my job is very easy, because I just need to ask them about what's going through with them. the power of the people who come on the podcast, which makes the podcast very interesting. And that's the whole idea behind all our podcasts, I think, bringing their stories. Um, and I love to do all these kind of things. So I'm a trainer by background, so I'm very comfortable being in the on the stage, having conversations with people, connecting with people. So that came easily. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know whether I should be doing a podcast, but what the Alcott Global channel provided was really a platform to bring together those people and share those stories. And that's what we are very conscious about when we are reaching out to people and we have the prep call. My role is to help them find what are some areas and niche areas which they can talk about. Because if every podcast guest talks about the same exact things, very soon the relevance is lost. So finding that particular superpower of this person related to talent makes it a bit unique with every guest.
How do you do that? How do you both find that niche? Again, you're content creators to me, not just podcast hosts, you actually design, develop the content. There are numerous blog posts, very useful, very informative blog content on alcottglobal.com. Also infographics, also reports that I've downloaded. And frankly, I'm really surprised because it just shows how much heart and soul and hard work that actually you put in there. It's very extensive. And it's unlike anything else. As I was searching for supply chain related information, it's really not presented in such a humane and very connective way. So I wonder, how do you guys find your niche and say, I know this is my audience and I'm putting together content that will resonate with them? Well, what was that process like?
I think it just comes from the people the consultants work with, right? In the executive search, I think, because they are interacting so much with the industry, right? And then from the feedback we get after the podcast or after our events, right? Even our events, the content that is discussed there, it's meant to shed some light, right, on things that seem so theoretical, or they just appear in the news, but you can't shadow somebody at a senior level to know what they are actually doing, right? How they are actually handling that situation. So supply chain is an ever evolving space. There's a lot of transformation. It's a complex global problem, right? It's in the news many times, just because sometimes disruptions affect the common person, right? When you can't find things in the supermarket, right, on the shelves, and we have all experienced that in the pandemic. So there are things that, like, rates increased, inflation, demand fluctuation, and all of these are problems. And of course, sustainability. Let's not forget this one, which is super important, right? So all of these projects, right, that supply chain professionals take on and the leaders are leading, are quite interesting, and it's super informative. It's a learning journey. That's why every time we finished a virtual event, we left the content there for a few weeks so that people can watch it on demand, like you can watch your Netflix at home or DC, right? Because there are some conversations that they might want to go back to. Oh, but let me see what did this person say? It sounded like he was saving costs somewhere, right? Or he was avoiding some cost. I have the same problem. I want to go back to that information. So the blog posts come like that, right? And the infographics the same. They are just basically our way of sharing this knowledge, right? That comes in high volume, and do our best to capture as many interesting stories and relevant topics for our audience.
And I think for me, especially for content for the academy, because that's content at a very large scale. And I had this question asked by one of the journalists: how did you go about with it? Did you just tell people this is the content? I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Uh,
Yes, you're
yeah,
Okay,
repeat
all right.
that one more time, Shu. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, what I was saying is for us, it wasn't prescriptive when we started creating content for the academy, and you were part of the process phase. So, yes, of
Mhm.
course, we had buckets, we had pillars we wanted to cover, whether it's for the hard skills or it's for the business skills that we wanted to hit that nail. But I don't think I ever went to one of the experts and said, these are the topics, can you cover any of them? So, a lot of it was about going to people and saying that, look, what are some of the areas where you feel you have a lot of content to share, you have a lot of knowledge, you will bring relevance related to the contemporary topics? And then we would have brainstorming session. It would be sometimes multiple sessions where we would talk about what are the different areas they can cover, how we can bring relevance to it. So that
Mhm.
was with the experts, and the other part is the market, which Christina touched on. We have consultants and executive search partners who are talking to people. I'm always talking to people, whether they are in L&D or chief supply chain officers or VPs of supply chain, of what is it that they are, and from there we see what makes the most sense to them, doesn't. Plus, we are also doing live sessions with organizations. So depending on what kind of sessions get the most traction, it gives us a bit of a guidance. So I would say it's a bit of trial and error, a bit of brainstorming, a bit of understanding the needs of the market, and then when it all comes together, it starts making a lot of sense.
I love it. And I was just sharing very briefly, projecting the Alcott Global Supply Chain Academy, which is a Netflix style type of academy. It's so exciting because it really touches and addresses to, not just the senior executives and directors and above, but you could be a newcomer, you could be intermediate level, you could be people who are considering a career path there, you could be a company who want your workers to level up and really learn the holistic side of supply chain. I am so excited about this. Among other things, there's a book coming out. There are additional, award ceremonies and sessions. So, could one of you, maybe, what both of you, please speak to the academy? How does that follow? Sort of. I feel like the mission of Alcott is behind it. Why were you excited to really pour so much time and energy and resources into building this platform?
Shub, do you want to go first?
Yes, absolutely. So uh, we started learning solutions last year, beginning of last year, and it was designed, to have live workshops curated for the organizations, very much customized to them. And then, again, the need of the market. We're talking to people, and they're like, all these topics are great, but we've realized with the pandemic, and actually the pandemic brought supply chain as a very mission critical function. Before
Mhm.
the pandemic, it used to be a back end function. Now people started realizing it's the backbone of any organization, which it used to be before, but it didn't have that kind of visibility. And suddenly people from other departments have started becoming part of supply chain. Supply
Mhm.
chains themselves have become so complex. And for a lot of leaders, the issue was, what, our people sometimes don't even understand the basics. What they learned 20 years is no longer relevant. So can we
Mhm.
have sort of a platform, the topics where they feel they might be missing out on different things, and then
Mhm.
bridge their gap, learn in their own time, while we continue investing in led workshops and learning fiestas and business talks and curated capability conversations. So the platform,
Mhm.
if I were to look at it, it's catering to that need of bridging that mass knowledge gap on different subtopics, and then moving to having very customized knowledge. And then we're launching some exciting things next year.
Mm. Look forward to it. Christina, do you have anything to add?
So what I would say is the academy, it's somehow an evolution from the virtual events as
Mhm.
well, because that's when the impactful learning, right? We got that feedback that people are learning those things. So we wanted to go a bit more focused, right, on this. But the idea behind is this has to be taught by experts in the industry, right? Who are dealing with that, who are solving these problems, right? That's what makes it so special. It's not like a textbook that where you have all these information that has not been upgraded, right? Because it's very hard to catch up at the speed supply chains change. So with actual professional experts who are dealing with, they are created by these professional experts who are dealing with these matters of supply chain. Of course, the event basically had few hours, right? Or the sessions would be very long. Honestly, Academy comes in short bites, impactful bites. That's something that it's very easy to learn. So you go through the modules, and then every time you learn something in a few minutes. It's not so much introduction and so much theory. It's really something that you can go and run with it, and maybe use it as because it's based on case studies and on real situations.
I really love the content and the people that you have spent so much time, I would say, to recruit and to really encourage them to work on the project, because I think most people don't realize that it takes a lot of time and effort to work with these collaborators and edit these videos, put on, subtitles. And in particular, I love the fact that they are not only bite-sized, but it's very holistic approach to supply chain, to really any career, including storytelling, digital transformation, business acumen, functional skills, and technologies that people need to focus on. So it's really interesting. And I know that you're thinking about adding even more courses, maybe early next year, and that is something that we can all really look forward to. So anybody who's watching right now, I know there are a few of you floating. Feel free to send us any questions here. And I'm going to just pivot a little bit into the fact that there are people who are approaching me to say, well, that's really interesting that there are a lot of career opportunities now in supply chain, and which is sort of, initially or still today is the bread and butter of, who Alcott Global is. So could you maybe talk about the importance of supply chain as a career, and why is it a good idea to develop a career in supply chain in general?
Should I get this one?
Yeah, let's do it, Cristina.
So
Go ahead.
maybe supply chain is such an abstract concept, right? Most people are familiar with manufacturing, with logistics, right? That are maybe they have a longer history, right? I would quote Radu Palamario, our managing director, in his book. In the first pages of the book, he says, so what is supply chain, right? So he says like this: every company that makes products has these pillars: plan, source, make, deliver, return. And what connects them all is the supply chain. So I love this definition because it's quite clear. In the same time, it explains the complexity and the fact that supply chains are large people's organizations, right? Radu did have on the podcast few guests, like the chief supply chain officer of Colgate Palmolive and the chief supply chain officer of Lexmark. They have spent half of their careers, so over 20 years, or even their entire careers, over 40 years, in the supply chain organization, evolving through different roles, because there's so much opportunity. That's one of the things when considering a career in supply chain. Second, there's just a lot of technology in supply chain nowadays. There are digital transformations happening at a very high speed, and a lot of tech people spending time creating these solutions, and others implementing them, of course, in the at the company sides, the product makers. Yeah. I would go on and add, right, for the people who have a mission to contribute to a sustainable world. I mentioned that a bit earlier in this conversation. There are so many interesting projects happening in supply chain, and they are impactful, right? Because there's so many things that have to be restructured or maybe restructure is the right way in from the planning perspective, and then the implementation in the supply chains. And then Shub said before that the supply chains are the backbone of an organization. Yeah, they can make or break the business, right? There can be a lot of cost involved. There can be a lot of it's a business function. Nowadays, it takes a business sit. So business skills are welcome in supply chain, and people evolve to leadership positions while developing this type of skills. So I was a project manager, actually an operations for project management in supply chain before joining Alcott Global. So even all these functions that maybe are more popular in other industries, they are actually present in supply chain.
I'm learning so much. Shub, were you going to say something as well?
No, so I was just going to add, supply chains have become so relevant in today's date. They've got a seat at the table, not only in the business, but also all our dining tables, because we've seen the brunt of it when your supply chains don't make an impact. And again, I think Radu wrote a fantastic article of why COOs and CSCOs, so the chief supply chain officers and chief operating officers, are now at a very good position to become the CEOs, because they understand the business. So I think anybody who's looking at making an impact in the business world, supply chain is a fantastic area to look at it. Plus, I think we all who are in supply chain space and we are interacting with people in supply vouch, we love the people in supply chain. These are very humble people who are looking at making a massive difference in the world, in the organizations, and the way they interact. It's a very, very different way of being. I've been an executive recruiter before, and I've worked in the finance space before, and I can tell you that I absolutely love the people in supply chain. So it's a very good, very impactful people who make on a daily basis.
That's so good to hear. And, again, I want to point people to directors and up. There's some senior level jobs that are available at jobs@alcottglobal.com. So definitely worth checking it out. And I've also included links if you're thinking about checking out the podcast, the job search, the academy. That's also in the description. So thank you for being here. I know that you both shared something new that I'm looking at. I'm getting very excited. Is it called a Supplyfy? Am I saying it correctly?
Supplify.
Oh, Simplify. So could you maybe talk about that and what it is and what it does?
It's just a marketplace connecting. It's a platform where all the technology for supply chain is present. So all the companies, it's a crunch base as well to understand, that offers companies an opportunity to search for the solution they need in their supply chain. As I was mentioning, there's a lot of digital transformation, and different companies have different needs, right, in different parts of their supply chain organization. So Supplify has all these solutions listed. So far, it's still in beta version, so we are still crunching the data. We are still updating to the latest to the latest developments on the market, and this is going to be ongoing because digital transformation and new solutions are coming up like at a very high pace. It's also a place for investors to see what is new, what are the potential investments they would want to make in the new startups, or even sometimes scale-ups, right? Scale-ups still receive funding. So in a nutshell, this is what Supplify does.
I'm impressed. There's a lot of work that went into this, I can already tell. I also know another area that Alcott has been focusing on. Again, I'm not an expert, so I'm also learning here. Are the workshops, customized the program and training, even for the academy itself. And I know that, I overheard and learned from you guys that you are also working with, HR leaders, L&D leaders to develop potential career paths. So there's a customization that you also provide there. So could you maybe talk about the different topics and areas that you're focusing on, and whoever's watching right now, maybe this is the right program for them?
Sure.
True.
So I
Yeah.
question career customization from Alcott. Do you mean the companies that we are working?
Yeah, actually, yeah, if we can talk about that on the academy side, that would be great. But I also know that as part of the website, there's also training and workshops outside of the academy. If you want to speak to both or one of them, that would be great.
Okay, so for the learning solution side, what we want to give way of looking at their career within supply chain, in their organizations and beyond. So within the academy, we have the option of doing assessments. Now, these assessments have 25 plus years of data attached to them, where suppose if I'm a buyer or a category manager and I want to move to the next role, assessment and see what are the different skills gap I have, not only in my organization, but also from the industry standard. And then I have a clear path of what I need to learn, what are the skills I need to develop, and then go from there. So that's one way of chartering out your career. What we also want to do is to enable certain competencies which are very critical to supply chain. And if you read our Source to Soul, which was written by Radu Palamario and Knut Alike, created the chain model, which talks about the five main, like we've bundled main things and kept together, which organizations can now use to, assess the talent, look at the training solutions they have, as well as do succession planning, allow their own staff to plan their own careers. That's for the first part, which you touched about the careers. Then you talked about the live workshops, which we do. So we together supply chain leaders. So we do have live roundtables, closed networking sessions for leaders to come together and discuss the contemporary issues. So we have one happening next week, December, where we are getting some of the leaders together in a virtual roundtable to talk about some of the supply chain challenges we are looking at in 2023 and how we as a community can support one another. On top of that, we also do for organizations based on where they are right now and where they want to be in the coming years. And we've done 10 people workshops over a course of 3 months, story. But we've also done, twice a month sessions on different supply chain topics, bringing in experts who are dealing with those things for an organization for 14 months now. And we've done a learning fiesta for a large 3PL organization, having 10,000 plus people for a course of 3 weeks, getting to them external perspective of what's happening in the organization and what they can look at moving forward. So I think it depends where the organization is at, and then for us to connect the dots and then bring in together who are experts in that particular field to give them a very holistic learning solution for it, because it's no longer just providing training. It is looking at end-to-end learning for their workforce.
Wow. How exciting is that? Cristina is smiling. That's good. You both work so hard. My goodness. And then I can feel like your energy wise, you do love, what you're focusing on. I think you can feel the impact. And I have to say that I love the fact that it's such a global team as well. We are all we have been in different time zones. We work with people really all around the world. I've not been on a project that's more global than this one. And everybody's very happy. You know, I've really expressed this previously, probably more than once, but the fact that there's a lot of synergy among team members. People are smiling a lot when we're hopping on calls. And the crazy thing is, like, we're smiling and tackling problems, even when we're facing challenges, right? We're coming in together, we're smiling to say, hey, how do we, get around to this? So I really appreciate and really enjoy that energy.
So
Me
I'll give you
too.
an
I
example,
think that
Faye.
sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Please go
go
ahead.
So I'll give you an example which I told some friends. We had our team building for the senior people just beginning of this month, and we had a session where we were talking about each other's superpowers and also the weaknesses we had. And I have people being so joyful in a session. Usually, the past corporations I worked with, these sessions are very intense, and everybody hates these sessions, and you feel you're attacked. We were literally laughing, and there was a big ruckus about it, and the whole idea. And I think here the credit goes to Cristina and Radu for creating a culture where people can be very open and still have fun, and that's what you touched based on. We had
Mm-hmm.
challenges during the launch academy, but in finding solutions, it's never a case of, oh, you done this wrong. That's something which
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate, and I think everyone appreciates, and that speaks a lot about the culture. So to both Christina, actually to Radu, while he's enjoying his time in Dubai.
Oh, that's nice. Christina, you were gonna say something as well?
Yeah, I was saying because as we had the team building, right, we spent some time reflecting on what happened this year, especially, and a lot of things happened, right, and we were looking at what brings the energy, right, and what makes us go and just take a bite at it, right? And we don't know. We
Mhm.
create out of nothing. We created something, and we
Mhm.
created many somethings this year, right? And we had the academy, the beta launch of Supplify, Radu and Knut's book. We had
Mhm.
leaders in supply chain awards, right? So it's exactly this, right? The creator energy. I was saying that sometimes it feels. I'm imagining that that's how an artist feels when is in front of a canva and starts creating something, right? There's nothing.
Mhm.
There's absolutely nothing, and then at the end, when you look at what the masterpiece or the thing that brings so much value, energy, beauty, right, it's just there. So not only the outcomes are motivating, but being part of that creating process, for me,
Mhm.
it's amazing. And I think this is not only me in our team. Everyone enjoys this kind of journey. Sometimes it's hard, but as
Mhm.
Shub was saying, right, bringing a bit of humor,
Mhm.
but always like trying to find solutions and making things workable, right? And yeah,
Mhm.
try to be the best.
I'm a little jealous because I've been working with you guys for 7, 8 months, and I look at LinkedIn, everybody's smiling. You have these team outings with just groups of people eating, sitting together at a restaurant. Then you have the team building events. I was literally thinking the other day, I was like, I have to, get over there and
Yes,
participate.
that's you
Yeah, and then
should.
you travel and, I felt like, man, I thought I worked for really fancy marketing consulting firms. I didn't really get to do this part as much. And Shub is back. And I love to talk about the creator energy. And that really is something I kind of leads to my next question, which is, what's next for Alcott? And I feel like really when we say what's next, we don't mean like next year, 5 years from now. Is number one, how do you balance and choose the next project to work on? Because you're always working on something, you're always creating something, like from a planning, leadership, creative perspective. Like, how do you choose? That's something I personally struggle with. And I know my audience certainly do as well.
We are both laughing right now because I think I was having this conversation with somebody from supply chain, and they were talking about, the crisis brings about a lot of change, and we've realized a lot of organizations, they change only in crisis. And I was joking with them, we create crisis for ourselves. We'll think of an idea and we'll give, okay, this is a very good idea. Typically, organization takes 6 months to 2 years to launch it. Let's launch it in 2 months, and then we will have this whole crisis for ourselves. But I think it makes it a lot of fun. It allows us to launch things in modular formats. Like you you can it's very difficult to launch a perfect product. And what's perfect to you may not be perfect for the audience you're targeting. So it would rather be that you launch something, and if it doesn't work, you can always change gears, but you do it fast. And it keeps the energy of everyone ongoing, versus you think and think and think, and it's 2 years and you're still thinking about a project. So I think that's how most of us operate here at Alcott. Yeah, Christina, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so the bias towards action is out of charts. That's definitely not an understatement. So that's pretty much what Shub said, right? We work in modular formats, right? We speak to the people in the industry, and sometimes there are these needs, right? So we assess what's the minimal viable project that we can go ahead with to have a go at it and to see whether this is what actually will make the impact, right? Because we work on impact, and we work on on strategic, right? In our mission, we are strategic, but the next point is it has to be impactful, right? So if it's not impactful, then there has to be a change, a change implemented, take a bit of a different route.
I love it. When I first, got in touch with you, and the moment I remember was in April, and you said you have this vision for this online academy, you'll launch in June. I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. Let's do it. I found it so exciting, and I love these impossible projects. People's like, you should always plan, over plan, and wait for the perfect moment. I don't think the perfect moment ever really exists. Like you said, it's very subjective. And oftentimes when you wait, that's when your competitors will actually step in and, create something, very similar to yours. Whereas now I feel like we're, leading the charge and presenting something that the industry has not really seen before, and then done in a very friendly, very accessible way. And then when I remember I was doing some, internal user testing, and people who are not as familiar with supply chain, they look at this and say, I can learn from that. I want to learn how to be a better storyteller. Oh, my company is struggling with digital transformation. This is absolutely relevant. So yeah, it's very, very exciting. So what's next for Alcott in 2023 for people to want to, stay in touch and learn more about you? What's the best way to do that?
Of course, you shared some links. I think those are the relevant links for on how to get new updates on Alcott Global. Of course, I would suggest following Alcott Global on LinkedIn, and Alcott Global consultants as well on LinkedIn, and yeah, Alcott Global employees. Sometimes even the posts can be a learning lesson through the what is shared, the engagement, what people put in, right, in those comments. Sometimes it's like I bookmark them and I come back. It's also a learning for me. So I that might be quite useful for people interested, supply chain enthusiasts, or just as a curiosity, because supply chain is everywhere. So yeah.
I think a lot of people find it really interesting, the fact that Alcott Global itself, the LinkedIn page, has a lot of traffic, and you both individually. I know Shub, but last time I checked, was like 13,000 followers. Radu himself has something like 250,000 followers. it's crazy. These are the people I know that I paid attention to, but how are you able to build up such an empire? Because it's really not trivial for people to gain that many followers on LinkedIn or really, frankly, anywhere. So, what is the trick? There's everybody, I'm sure, ask you about that, and I want to learn how to do it.
I will give you that trick very easily, and Christina will add hers. Just add value. I think the moment you stop focusing on I need followers and start focusing on let me add value to the kind of people I want to attract, you start getting followers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not as popular on LinkedIn, but I did have a lot of discussions with Radu about this, right? Because it's amazing the amount of followers he has, and he did say in few interviews as well, right? Another thing besides adding value is authenticity, being yourself, having your own voice, and standing by the things you believe first in, but also sharing relevant information for the and having a voice about it, right? Not just taking a link and putting it there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think those are the conversations that get the most engagement. People want to talk about this, and I believe that played a very important role in him gathering this kind of insane amount of followers.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I mean, this is really important next step. And like you said, add value, be authentic, and I think Alcott is kind of this content machine. There are a lot of people kind of rehashing the same idea, same posts, whereas Alcott is always sharing something new. And I wonder, do you ever find that exhausting? Or how do you know that? And also, how do you know that you're adding value, you're speaking to, you're solving problems for people?
I think it's the audience that gives this feedback, right? So you
Yeah.
you can see from the tracking you have, right,
Mhm.
whether people feel that this is relevant, right? Or sometimes even some reactions are quite um, strong, right? Some people really get that idea, they associate themselves with one idea, or they agree with it that this is how it happens, and some would be the total
Mhm.
opposite side of it. and
Mhm.
and that's where actually people learn more things, because there are more perspectives. If everyone has the same
Mhm.
opinion, it's very hard, right? So
Mhm.
I believe that those kind of posts are um, very insightful, um, and yeah, that's the
Mhm.
trick.
Yeah, paying attention to audience engagement is huge. There are a lot of hints, actually, the next type of content that you can create right from the comment section. A lot of people do ignore it, don't reply, but I saw just how engaging, like all of you reply to all the comments there are on LinkedIn. That's a lot of effort. So yeah,
Yeah.
but this is really interesting, and I want to respect your time. I think both of you have to run to a meeting pretty soon, but is there anything that you're like, please, we can't be late? Anything before we close? Anything that you want to leave our audience with that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
I think it's too general. Like I have a lot of things going on in my mind right now, which may not be relevant for the audience. But yeah,
You think we did
no,
pretty well?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. We've covered most of the topics we wanted to cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we'll leave some call to actions. Again, all the links are in the description, but I definitely encourage people to check out alcottglobal.com. If you haven't heard of them, it's a great way to learn, frankly, not just about supply chain, but how they build their audience, how they build their influence and create content. Content-based strategies is just the very best. So make sure to check out the Academy, alcottglobal.com, their job search, Simplify, which is brand new. And with that said, I just want to take a moment and thank you both for being here and for people who hopped on, and hope to see you back here again in the near future.
Thank you,
Uh,
Faye.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you
I'm going
very
to take us.
much. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to take us offline now. Bye, guys.